All right, we'll get started now. Thank you for joining us at the fifth webinar in the Social Justice and Equity series. My name is Alex Ambrose. I am a policy analyst at New Jersey Policy Perspective, a former policy assistant at New Jersey LCV, and guest moderator for tonight's webinar. Once again, this webinar is accessible in English and Spanish. Thank you to Sofia Rosa from Latino Action Foundation Network for translating tonight. We ask that you change your name in Zoom so we know who's here with us this evening. And we want to make sure you know that this webinar will be recorded and available online later. As a reminder, please stay muted during the webinar. And if you run into any technical issues, you can send a private message to any of the Zoom co-hosts, and they'll be glad to help. There will be time at the end for Q&A, but as we go through the presentation, you are welcome to drop your questions in the chat where the staff will be collecting them. Why this series? We know that some people may be wondering why an environmental organization like New Jersey LCV is discussing the challenges faced by immigrant communities in New Jersey. Immigrant communities are some of the most marginalized and often lack access to clean and healthy environments to work and live in. Some of New Jersey LCV's closest partners represent environmental justice and language minority communities. And these partners have mentioned the need for immigration reform to support documented persons and those seeking documentation in obtaining and holding jobs and stable housing. Further, New Jersey LCV believes that the environmental movement has missed opportunities to successfully advance bold and sweeping policy change because we have built too exclusive a movement. The environmental movement has viewed environmental issues too narrowly, missing opportunities for collaboration and building more power with partners on intersectional issues like public health, economic justice, and more. This has prevented the building of a large-scale, multiracial, and cross-class movement for change that is needed to ensure a just transition of our economy and other systems. Black and brown-led organizations and individuals have known this for years. Simply put, the environmental movement cannot be successful without racial, social, economic, and immigrant justice. Partners in environmental justice and social justice groups have supported our movement, and New Jersey LCV believes it's a priority to reciprocate that support, advocacy, and solidarity. That's why we're hosting this webinar series to better understand racial and social justice issues in the state while touching on environmental justice and environmental racism. We're excited to learn from tonight's speakers, and we hope you are too. So, how does a webinar on immigration intersect with environmental justice? We know that immigrants migrating due to forced displacement tend to be low-income people of color. When moving to New Jersey, these communities are more likely to live in older housing stock and buildings with worse housing conditions. Not only is indoor air quality usually worse in older homes and buildings, there's a strong correlation between low income and people of color and proximity to polluting facilities and infrastructure like power plants and major highways. In addition, due to language barriers, immigrant communities may receive delayed or no notice in the event of extreme storms, outages, and other poor circumstances as a result of natural disasters. With climate change causing more frequent and severe storms and other natural disasters, Immigrants may have trouble accessing adequate resources to remain safe during these events. Lastly, we will see more and more people forced to leave their home countries as a result of climate change and rising sea levels. We can expect to see millions, if not billions, of people from island nations and coastal communities migrate inland and across the globe, seeking refuge from climate catastrophe. Immigrants displaced in South and Central America may be driven to the United States due to economic drivers tied to climate change. New Jersey can do better for immigrants coming to the Garden States. That's why we're grateful to have amazing speakers demonstrate some of the challenges and solutions to immigrant justice needed in New Jersey. Before I turn it over to our speakers tonight, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for supporting and uplifting this webinar in alphabetical order. Thank you to the co-sponsors, ACLU of New Jersey, ANJAC, Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, New Brunswick Area NAACP, New Jersey Black Empowerment Coalition, Newark Science and Sustainability, New Jersey Highlands Coalition, Social Justice Matters, Trust for Public Lands, Voters of Tomorrow, New Jersey. And for tonight's honorary sponsors, New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, Latino Action Network Foundation, and New Jersey Policy Perspective. A special thank you to Maria Santiago Valentin, steering committee member of NJP, and Marcus Sibley, Environmental and Climate Justice Chair of the Southern Burlington County, New Jersey NAACP, for your help in inspiring New Jersey LCV to pursue this series. We are excited to introduce our first speaker for this webinar, Ana Paulo Posnino. Ana is the Executive Director of Unidad Latina en Acción NJ, a grassroots immigrant rights organization based in Princeton. She is also an educator of language and culture, teaching in public schools throughout New Jersey. Through her life experiences and stories, she began to organize with the undocumented community in 2009. She frequently tells her story about migrating from Ecuador with her mother in 1991 and being undocumented for 10 years. She completed her undergraduate work at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, and her graduate work at Montclair State University. She has participated in numerous actions at the state level for workers' rights and immigrant rights. Her passion for justice and community power is what keeps her grounded and moving forward. Welcome, Ana.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for the space. I appreciate it. As a woman, as a Latina, it's very important to keep our social justice movements together and connected. So this migrant justice and climate justice goes hand in hand. And today it's a great space to be a part of. So I can talk a little bit about Unidad Latina en Acción as an organization, but also as a it's a human rights and migrant rights connection. So thank you for this, and we'll get started. I wanted to talk a little bit about our work and a little bit about what we're doing in the organization as well as throughout New Jersey. And I'm happy to be here with other organizations too that have played a big role in bringing migrant justice work to the table at many of our campaigns. So a little bit about ULA. ULA, we're a grassroots org. We're volunteer run until probably since 2009, like 15 years now. We have been fighting for workers' rights we started off with a International Workers' Rights Day on May Day. And ever since then, in the city of Hightstown, we've been working in the area of Mercer County, Princeton, the city of Princeton, and collaborating with many other organizations in Trenton area. Next slide, please. So we wanted to show a little bit about our work. We meet with the community based on the needs. We have a lot of active members, our worker leaders who take part in our campaigns and who we actually push forward to say and raise voices that might be unheard. We're here, if you could tell our pictures, meeting, organizing, educating, and very much empowering one another, and then empower with that sense of self-empowerment that we give, so that in any case, for example, in the case of workers' rights and labor abuses, we've seen so many of them. We are demanding that we're demanding that some of the protection be given to workers because of the abuses that they have during their experiences in their different workplaces. And I'm going to go a little bit slower, I see. I'm sorry, Sophia. So one of our biggest campaigns is Dale, right? We're talking about denouncing workplace abuses and also protecting the workers who do that, and working in collaboration with the Department of Labor in the state of New Jersey, which helps sort of regulate and see how these cases can be investigated. This has been a tremendous win, right? Because it gives protection to workers who have been working as day laborers, restaurant workers, domestic workers, nannies, housekeepers, and then also we have moved from that sense of I can't denounce something is happening to me at work. I can raise my voice and have a little bit of protection through the DHS department, who had announced earlier this year that there will be a protection for workers who denounce. So this is one of the major campaigns that we work with. And as you can see, we say accept our labor, respect our rights. But this has a lot to do with how migrants have come to the area of raising their voices and also having the protection that they deserve, right, as they're working and as they're going through, depending on what sector. Because like I mentioned, there's workers from all over. It could be from restaurants to the day laborers that are on the corner, that have daily work, that do construction. And so on the next slide, we can see a little bit of the mission, which is something that we're collaborating today. And I'm excited that many of the viewers today will be able to make that connection with not only migrant justice, but with climate justice, with other types of work that we do as a social justice community. So our mission has been to educate, empower, and organize through different areas, through some of the areas that have not been so open to our community because of the lack of language barriers and lack of access to meeting spaces like this, right? Next slide, please. we're gonna move on to the next slide. Thank you. So here you can see we have united with a lot of other organizations like the New Jersey Immigrant Justice Alliance, our May Day March, where we have many local organizations that support and come out to march in the streets of Princeton. And what we have is the workers themselves become the leaders in the campaigns for cases for workplace abuse in the area of, right now we're in Princeton, and there's going to be a campaign for the abuses that are happening right now with renters and the renting high elevated rents. So things like that, but we come together as a community, and then based on the needs of what is happening in the area. We're gonna go through some other slides. Next slide, yes. So we see that there's a lot of anti-immigrant racism and attacks towards our community. So when we're focusing on our vision, we're focusing on how we can retaliate in a strategic manner so that we can confront deportations, we can confront these detention centers that we want out of New Jersey, and as well as believing that the community can be an active participant in policy and in, if needed, in work that happens like with rallies and marches, right? And we're going to continue on the next slide with our domestic workers. So another big campaign that we have is the domestic workers, and we're working closely with the Coalition for the National Domestic Workers Alliance, where we are able to meet with senators, assemblywomen, assemblymen that know that are able to support this Bill of Rights that we're pushing in New Jersey. Other states have it. Other states have been successful in implementing. There's a federal one also being worked at the national level. But we know that in New Jersey, domestic workers need this protection, right? We have thousands of domestic workers that are working without contracts. They're working without sick days, without vacation pay, working multiple days and hours without overtime pay, without salaries. And so we know that this is harming the families that we see, especially families with children, women that have maybe are single mothers, and they need these types of protections, especially the need of having a day off if your child is sick, and also it leads to other of our close endeavors that we are also pushing for, like healthcare for all, and making sure that the workers are bringing out their voices and their experiences themselves. So this is very connected with the workplace abuse too, because there's a lot of workplace abuse with domestic workers. We just don't have that voice to say this is happening because there's no type of protection that comes about it. In the next slide, what we're doing, right, with different campaigns, we solidify into committees, right? We have our committees for excluded and essential workers, our health and safety committees. We're doing some food justice with our food distribution, our work with deportations and against detention centers. And so with this, we involve all the members of our community, and then we try to get everyone involved and work with the other organizations as well. Some that are here today, but also making sure that our work has been tied into the social justice equity work that we do. It's also important to mention that not only is this about workers' rights, but we've also worked with some local Princeton area organizations that have been doing work for environmental justice. And that's very tied in. We have a lot of workers who have been working in the fields of landscaping, gardening, in the farm areas, and they are very much exploited at times, and then don't have the protective gear that they need to do this work. So we worked closely with them last year with this organization, Sustainable Princeton, who helps out with the environment and also how it affects workers who work outside in these areas specifically for justice work. So I'm about to wrap up because I see the next slide is a little bit about just how you can look into our organization. Yeah, we can pass through these pictures. We can pass that. Thank you. We're on social media. You can go on our website. You can look through our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and any type of information is also through our radio Jornalera New Jersey, which I didn't put the link on here, but it's very tied in. So if you look at our social justice, you'll be able to see Radio Jornalera as well. Thank you for the space. I was able to tell you a little bit about Unidad Latina, but most importantly, I think it's important if you are ever in the Princeton area, Thursday evenings, we gather together in these meetings, and we're able to talk in person. So anytime you're in Princeton on Thursdays, 7 p.m., it would be great for you to visit us. And with that, I think I'm going to end. And if you have any questions, please let us know during question time. Thank you so much for this space, and let's keep on working together.
Thank you, Ana. All right, next we have Ana Sarato. Ana is the environmental justice organizer for Wind of the Spirit, New Jersey. She is a dedicated advocate for environmental justice with a strong background in business administration. She brings a unique perspective to the campaign. Her expertise is focused on enhancing the ability to strategize and manage resources effectively, ensuring the success of our efforts. She is passionate about creating positive change and uses her organizational skills to mobilize the community, raise awareness, and drive meaningful action. Her commitment to a sustainable future, combined with leadership qualities, makes the mission for a healthier and inclusive and more equitable environment. Ana will be joined by Kenya Cervantes, a community advocate and domestic worker of Honduran nationality. She has been in this country for 21 months. After surviving COVID and 2 hurricanes that took away everything she had managed to obtain over 20 years, her dream and greatest aspiration now is to establish herself with a permanent immigration status in this nation and start an international food business. Through her business, she hopes to serve many families, and she is putting all her experience and effort into achieving it. Welcome, Ana and Kenya.
Thank you so much, everybody. My name is Ana. I am an environmental justice organizer here at Wind of the Spirit. My organization was started in the year 2000, and ever since we have been committed into creating a positive change. During the beginning of our slideshow, we were talking about the opportunities that we had missed on. So I think one of the biggest questions that we can draw from this type of perspective is how does climate change impact immigration patterns? What are some of the challenges and opportunities associated with the intersection of migration and climate change? These issues are intersectional, so I think it's very important to keep that in mind. Next slide, please. So Wind of the Spirit is a faith-based organization for all immigrants and non-immigrants who are moved by the tradition of hospitality. Wind of the Spirit works with immigrant communities to ensure their success, to access information that will strengthen their leadership and that will also allow them to realize their power as social and political actors. We also have strong campaigns, like I think one of our strongest ones was the access to driver's licenses here in New Jersey. That was passed just 2 years ago. It was something that we fought over very hard for over 20 years, and that is now a reality for all our undocumented New Jersey residents. Access to driving here is essential, and we believe that it's important for people to realize the role that they play in their communities and the rights that they're entitled to. Next slide, please. As an organization, we recognize that various social, economic, and environmental situations have contributed to displacement and immigration on a large scale, leaving people helpless who more than ever need better living conditions and new opportunities. After 22 years of service, Wind of the Spirit has been able to overcome barriers to create a path that has been marked by a peaceful resistance against the traces of discrimination and hatred in search of equality and justice for all. I think this touches very heavily on something that we are currently working very hard on. It's called Values Act, which is one of the initiatives. It's not a permanent law as of now, but it's an initiative that establishes that ICE and law enforcement shouldn't cooperate, and it's something that keeps our communities safer. Years ago, we saw that it will create a panic in our communities when somebody would be like, oh yeah, there's ICE officers in downtown and the streets will like be empty in a matter of minutes. So we can see how these tactics of fear played in a key role in our communities, and it's something that we don't want to see repeated. As I stated before, it's not a permanent law as of now, but we're pushing through to make that permanent in our state, and so that we don't become the next Florida, for example. Next slide, please. So as stated before, sustainability and social justice are intersectional. So we're actively working with the Clean Energy Jobs Coalition. We use something called the Listen, Lead, and Share campaign model, which we have like workshops, and those workshops are replicated by some of our members. And our goal is to educate community members and legislators about the intersection of migration, sustainability, and the environment. There's a current plan in place by President Biden that establishes that we should be, I think, a clean, like a sustainable society by the year 2030, if I'm not mistaken. And we want to ensure that our communities are taken account of in this process, and that we are not alienated as we have seen in the past. Next slide, please. So we are located in Dover, Plainfield, Morristown, and Madison. We have on a range of different programs ranging from domestic workers, clean energy jobs. These are some of the actions that we've gone to in Trenton. We do the Values Act as well. And so yeah, these are some, we participate actively in town halls across all our towns. We are working very hardly in housing. We see that a lot of our communities here are affected heavily by gentrification and not having access to sustainable living conditions and living spaces. So we like to ensure the right that it is to live with dignity here in the US, regardless of immigration status. Next slide, please. One of our towns here in Morris County, is Madison, that they have began to establish something called the Buildings Up initiative. That is something that we want our communities to take part of, or like begin to be involved with. The Buildings Up initiative, I think, is a good example of what a town does when they want to move in a more sustainably friendly environment. So, for example, one of their main thing is changing the generators in people's houses to move to completely electric, so no longer using coal or any other of these like dirty energy sources. So one of the things that we do is actively participating with towns that already have established sustainable models, like you having solar panels in most of the town buildings, and also including communities in this process. So maybe people can have access to that in their houses that they rent, and then maybe having some sort of benefit, as well as educating the communities on what these sources are and where we can find opportunities for our communities to be benefited through this process. Next slide, please. And here we have our third speaker. I'd like to introduce her, Kenia Cervantes, one of our community members.
Sí. Ahora lo pasamos a la siguiente oradora.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Bueno, mi nombre es Kenia Cervantes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenia Cervantes.
Yo vengo de la ciudad de La Lima, Honduras.
I come from the city of La Lima, Honduras.
Bueno, tengo 50 años de edad. Yo decidí venir a este país un día
I'm
porque,
50 years old and I decided to come to this country one day
porque los slides,
Next slide.
next, debido a los efectos del cambio climático, mi vida y la de mi familia cambió radicalmente.
due to the effects of climate change. My life and the life of my family changed significantly.
Porque, bueno, yo considero que aún soy una persona joven, productiva, con educación media en mi país. Toda la vida trabajé y amo mi país, pero se fue convirtiendo en el año 2020, luego de la situación que nosotros tuvimos con la pandemia, que el mundo entero fue afectado. Aparte de, adicional a eso, en mi país nos enfrentamos con dos fenómenos naturales en un mes. En 16 días, nosotros tuvimos la primera tormenta tropical ETA, que comenzó a llover desde noviembre, como 3 de noviembre comenzó a llover, y como el 5 o 6 de noviembre comenzaron los ríos a desbordarse de una manera tremenda. Acostumbrados a eso, porque es la verdad.
Disculpe, Ana. So I consider myself a productive young person with secondary education in my country. I worked all my life and I love my country, but it became, we got presented with two natural phenomena, which was the storm Eta and Iota. And it started raining November 2nd and around November 2nd and November 3rd, and around November 5th is when the rivers were overflowing.
Sí, para entender el daño que sufrimos los hondureños en esa área norte, debo decir que es un valle, es una zona de valle rodeado por dos ríos grandes, que incluso se afecta. Yo vivo en mi casa allá, estaba a 5 minutos del aeropuerto, incluso el aeropuerto es muy afectado. De alguna manera, aunque siempre, casi todos los años, desde ha sido muy severo en los últimos años. No hay como una protección para nosotros. Entonces, cada temporada de invierno es de que tú sales de tu casa porque va a haber una inundación. Eh, Como que esto no ha dado respiro, no hay soluciones en nuestro país porque no te da respiro de crecimiento. Tal vez nuestros cultivos, la gente tiene un periodo de producción y nuestra manera de sobrevivir sería que haya productividad en nuestro país, pero el problema es que no te da respiro porque no tienes el tiempo normal para producir, porque no te deja porque de octubre al siguiente octubre, tú vas a estar en el mismo problema.
Okay, to understand the damage that Hondurans suffered in the northern zone of the country is that the area where Kenya lives, it is a valley area that is surrounded by two rivers. Her house was near the airport, near these rivers, which was an area that was quite affected. It has been very severe since there is no protection, and every winter season, because there is going to be a flood, there is no breaks for growth. Crops, people have production periods, but there is no normal time to produce these crops because there is no breaks from flooding.
Entonces, siendo una persona con muchas perspectivas para hacer muchas cosas en mi país, yo me vi obligada a que la única solución era migrar para donde fuese. Y tenía la bendición de haber venido ya a este país porque yo tenía una visa y pues yo vi que de aquí, de alguna manera, yo no importaba la edad y yo podía trabajar, porque básicamente fue eso, se cerraron todas las puertas. Los que somos hondureños sabemos que en nuestro país, después de tus 35, 40 años, si no es en cuestiones de gobierno o política, tú ya no eres elegible para trabajar. Y yo sé que hay otras maneras y yo comencé a emprender allá un negocio, empecé a vender tamales, yo vendo tamales a pesar de que soy contadora de profesión y había ejercido por años esa profesión. Me tocó aprender a hacer tamales, me tocó vender comida y eso iba muy bien hasta que aparecieron estos dos fenómenos.
Being a person with a lot of perspective to do many things in my country, the only solution for me was to migrate to this country since I already had a visitor's visa. Because no matter how old I was, I knew that I was going to be able to find work. A thing about our country is that over there, it is not very lucrative if you are not doing any company work or if you work with the government. Kenya was being creative in ways that she was working. She was making food. She was making tamales. But then she was severely affected when these two storms hit the area.
En la diapositiva que tenemos ahí presente, ese era mi vehículo, un vehículo que fue pérdida total.
In this slide, you can see a picture of Kenya's car, which was a total loss because of the flooding.
Porque alguien podría decirme, pero sácalo, llévalo a un lugar donde no se llene, donde no se inunde. Pero hay otras imágenes donde tú ves que no hay salida, no hay para dónde irse. En la otra, estoy en el interior de mi casa. No pensé que el agua subiera tanto y yo traté de salvar algunas cosas, pero al final hay otra imagen donde se ve cuánto subió. Bueno, ahí mismo en medio ves hasta dónde subió el agua y tú no puedes salvar nada. Lo
Many
único que puedes
people would
salvar es
tell
tu
me,
vida.
many people would tell me that maybe I should have moved my car to an area where it wouldn't have been affected with the flooding, but there was no escape. It was gonna get damaged anywhere. And in the rest of the pictures, you can see the level of the water that rose in Kenya's house and how there was no escape from this flooding.
A nosotros no nos sucede como en este país, que cuando hay un desastre, tú tienes un seguro, tú de alguna manera, carro, pues te lo cambian. Nosotros no, yo simplemente perdí todo.
It doesn't
Y fue,
happen to us like in this country where you have car insurance or home insurance. That is not really a thing in a country like Honduras. So when you lose your car in like this, there is no going back and you pretty much just lost your car forever.
¿puedes darle a la siguiente slide? ¿Ya no hay más? Ah, bueno, habían unas donde se puede ver el área donde mi casa está señalada y está todo, o sea, no hay para dónde salir. Yo tengo un video donde yo grito, mi hijo en Honduras, él forma parte de la organización Cruz Roja Hondureña. Entonces yo a mi hijo, cuando pasa una semana cuando entra ETA, pasa una semana y nosotros sí podemos salir en una semana, no hay problema. Tú puedes sobrevivir en una semana, pero la siguiente semana entró IOTA. Entonces tú ya no puedes estar ahí. Cuando nosotros nos encontramos en la circunstancia de que yo ya no puedo estar ahí, ni mi familia, yo tengo un video donde yo comienzo a gritarle a mi hijo, a señales y pide que me sacan de aquí en un helicóptero.
You can see there, these are not pictured in this slide, but Kenya is telling us that she has pictures where you can see the area where her house was marked, and you can see that there was no escape. She pretty much couldn't go anywhere. There was flooding everywhere. Her son, who is part of the Honduran Red Cross, she was a week past since the first storm came, and then the next storm hit, which was a second week after that, and you couldn't be at your home anymore. The first week might have been survivable after the first storm hit, but after the second storm came, there was no escape from the house, and there are videos of Kenya yelling at a helicopter to rescue her from her home.
Y gracias a Dios, pues me tocó esperar ese día, no pudimos salir, pero el siguiente día salimos. Llegaron logró entrar un truck de esos gigantes que son altos, pudieron llegar hasta a una calle arriba y todos tuvimos que nadar y llegar hasta donde estaba para podernos salir. Luego de eso, nosotros no pudimos volver a nuestra casa hasta un mes después. Como el 16 de diciembre estábamos retornando a limpiar y a ver cómo estaba, a ver qué podíamos limpiar, qué había, ¿verdad? De regreso ya en nuestras casas, pero nos advirtieron que no era habitable, que no podíamos estar ahí por la humedad, por la contaminación, porque había muerto gente y la gente y animales y todo eso. Entonces tú no puedes vivir ahí, no puedes volver tan rápido. Hay mucho animal, mucho zancudo, mucha cosa, pero tampoco tienes dinero como para ir a pagar un hotel, como para ir a otros lados. Es algo muy difícil. Yo estuve hospedada yo asistía en mi país a una iglesia, entonces yo estuve en la iglesia y estuve también una parte del tiempo en la casa de mi hija, pero no podíamos estar porque había demasiada gente, toda la gente tenía que irse. Y esas son las cosas que nosotros vivimos y que tengo un primo vive aquí en el sur de Nueva York. Él se tuvo que venir con toda su familia porque él vivía en un área más crítica que yo, y cuando se inundó toda su casa, una de las reses que se ahogaron se la destruyó toda, o sea, un animal muy pesado más la corriente del río, él quedó sin casa siquiera que ir a ver. Entonces esas son las cosas que nosotros como hondureños hemos vivido, y gracias por su tiempo, gracias por entrar a las razones que muchas personas tienen para venir a este país. Gracias.
So thank God I had to wait that day, but the next day we left. I managed to get in a truck that was able to reach up the street, and Kenya and her family had to swim to get out. She was not able to return to her house, and then for about a month until December 16th, which they decided to clean up and see what they could salvage and assess the damage of the house. The communities were warned that it was not habitable due to the condition in which it was found, due to contamination, dead bodies, dead animals, mosquitoes. There was a lot going on. There was also no money to go to a hotel. It was something very difficult that she found herself staying at her church and also in her daughter's house. Her cousin, who had to basically flee to New York with his entire family since his house was damaged with severe flooding. And she wants to thank everyone here today for making the connection between social justice, immigration, and environmental justice. So thank you everyone for being here and for your time.
Thank you. And thank you, Sophia, and to all of our presenters. We will be keeping English and Spanish in this channel. Now we will turn to Q&A. Please continue dropping your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can.
A continuación, vamos a pasar a las preguntas. Si tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, escríbala en el chat.
First, let's start with a question for Kenya. Kenya, what was the most difficult about making the decision to leave your home and come to New Jersey?
Primero tenemos una pregunta para Kenia. ¿Cuándo decidiste dejar tu país de origen? ¿Cómo decidiste venir a Nueva Jersey? ¿Qué fue lo más difícil de tomar esa decisión?
Dejar mi familia. Dejar mi familia, y yo soy muy positiva y soy de las que da aliento. Yo le he dado aliento a mi gente en mi país, y dejar básicamente a mi familia, a mi madre, y allá está mi hija y mi nieto y mi hijo menor también, y es duro para mí, fue muy duro. Esa fue una de las decisiones más fuertes que yo he tomado.
The hardest thing to do was leave my family. I'm a very positive person. I give encouragement to all my people in my country, and that was the hardest part, leaving my family. I left my grandson, and my eldest son also lives over there. And yeah, that was definitely the hardest part.
Thank you, Kenya. Next question, we'll start with Ana Serrato and go to Ana Paula. What are some policies that maybe other states are implementing that New Jersey should consider to help immigrants in our state?
I can answer this question. We've seen in other states like California, or states that probably have been affected more than New Jersey, that younger demographics have taken the initiative into being more socially aware and maybe pushing for harder legislation. We've seen that in other states, for example, how can I say this? I'm sorry, I got lost in my thoughts. We've seen that younger demographics have began to push for things that would have longer effects. So maybe initiatives that no longer maybe just have us thinking first about climate change, but they push us to make more permanent decisions. I can also share some more resources in the chat regarding this.
Ana Paula, anything to add?
Well, I think that what we could use for the state of New Jersey is a little bit more of guidance through the Department of Labor for workers that work in the sector of the farm workers, in the sector of anything that has to do with outside and agriculture, because that really affects the environment and the families that are working with these in this type of industries. We work closely with another organization, GATA, who is the Farm Workers Committee, and I think someone from on the webinar is here from there. And I know that there's always some type of work that needs. It would be really great to see policy that protects the workers and also protects the environmental part of our state, right? Because we have such rich land. So that would be something that I think we could push a little bit more in the state of New Jersey.
Thank you.
I would
Next
just
we
like to add that something that is, I think, essential for our immigrant community is the registry bill. Without a doubt, the registry is a law that I think was started in the 70s. Well, it was an initiative as well where people that came to the US prior to a certain year could enter the registry and then have access to a path to citizenship. And then it was updated every certain amount of years. But now, as of 2023, it has not been updated at all. So, for example, we can have true environmental reform if we are not seeing all the faces that deserve to be part of this change. If people that are heavily impacted do not have access to the same rights and the same resources as everybody else does, this, along with humane migration policy, I think go hand in hand with environmental justice as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. This next question comes from Matt in the chat. How can the justice and environmental communities best work together? First, we'll go to Sophia for translation, and then we can start with Ana Paula.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. How can the justice and the environmental communities best work together?
¿Cómo pueden las comunidades ambientalista y de justicia social trabajar de la mejor manera en conjunto?
Well, I think that we've mentioned a little bit already about how many of the workers, members of our community, are part of the agriculture part of the state and working in the farms. But I also think another way is also giving a little bit of a voice to members of our community in terms of like local ordinances, local policy that happens in different towns. For example, like I mentioned in Princeton, we had like an ordinance for the landscaping companies, and they were severely affected by some of these ordinances. So there's like a big connection that perhaps we're not seeing because we're thinking it's only about environmental or it's only about immigration rights. But yet everything that happens with immigration and the environment is affecting the people, right? The local people of our cities. In Princeton, there was an ordinance that there couldn't be any landscaping work done on certain days. That affected the workers because they needed to work. It's not like they could say, oh, I can't work on Mondays and Sundays and etc. They need to feed their families. So I think that it's a big connection, and working together, we could look for correlations and see how best to make sure that the whole community is being affected positively by many of these policies and ordinances and work that we do.
I would like to add to that as well, that teaching the communities about the resources out there, maybe something that we do a lot here in Dover and in Plainfield and Madison, is starting to have the conversations around climate change, where people can start to bring in their initiatives, things that they would like to have access to. So one of the very biggest problems, I would say, in most of New Jersey, but well, actually in most of the country, but that I see on my day-to-day here is housing. People raise the question a lot about why are rents going up, but my salary isn't? Why am I targeted a certain way, but I am not getting any type of benefit? Why am I given more hours, but I'm still not able to afford my rent? So I think that in order to create true environmental change, we also have to look into these other policies and how we can educate our communities more on climate change, on clean energy, on housing ordinances. For example, here in the town of Dover, where I live, we've seen a more gentrification, I would say, over the past 2 years, with more luxury apartments being built. But then a lot of people in our communities are being pushed out or forced to live in basements that don't even have access to sunlight because the rents are going up. So I think that is something that is heavily affecting us and that we need to look more into in order to create a more fair reform.
Hemos mencionado cuántos de los trabajadores y miembros de nuestra comunidad trabajan en fincas y dan voz a los miembros de nuestra comunidad en ordenanzas o políticas locales. Por ejemplo, en Princeton hubieron varias ordenanzas relacionadas con el paisajismo que afectaron a varios de estos trabajadores. Hay que hacer la correlación entre lo que pasa con la migración y el medio ambiente y cómo esto afecta a estos trabajadores. Y trabajando juntos podremos ver las correlaciones y presentar soluciones, y también enseñando a la comunidad sobre los recursos. Comunidades como Dover comienzan a hablar de la justicia ambiental. Es importante también hablar de otros asuntos como la vivienda y como muchos miembros de nuestras comunidades no tienen acceso a viviendas asequibles y el precio de las rentas siguen subiendo y muchos salarios no suben. Es importante hablar sobre estos asuntos y que se haga la conexión entre la migración y la justicia ambiental.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for your insight and advocacy in creating a safer and healthier environment for immigrants in New Jersey.
Muchas gracias a todos y gracias por hacer de New Jersey una comunidad saludable.
We are out of time, but we encourage everyone to follow our speakers and their organizations. Their accounts are on the slide here.
Se nos ha acabado el tiempo, pero en la diapositiva pueden ver a nuestros oradores del día de hoy y cómo pueden contactarlos.
Thanks once again to our co-sponsors, and a special huge thanks to Sofia Rosa from Latino Action Network Foundation for translating this evening.
Gracias una vez más a nuestros copatrocinadores y un agradecimiento especial a Sofía Rosa de Latino Action Network Foundation por traducir esta noche.
Once again, this was the 5th webinar in the Social Justice and Equity series. Stay tuned for information about the 6th and final webinar in the Social Justice and Equity series, which will be on education reform.
Una vez más, este fue el 5º seminario web de la serie de Justicia Social y Equidad. Estén atentos para obtener información sobre el 6º y último seminario de la webs de la serie sobre justicia social y equidad, que tratará sobre la reforma educativa.
Enjoy your evening, everyone.
Disfruten